This is Akashvani. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on Aditya L1, India's first solar observatory mission. The participants are Lieutenant General Anil Kumar Bhatt, science expert, and Sagar Kulkarni, journalist.
Hello and welcome. We have with us today Lieutenant General A.K. Bhatt, the voice of the nascent space industry of the country. So, General Bhatt, tell us about this Aditya mission. What is this all about?
As I would put it, Aditya mission is a purely scientific exploratory mission carried out by ISRO. And the main aim of this mission is to have a space station closer to the sun at a place called the Lagrange point. L1, it is called. There are 5 of them. One of them is Lagrange point. This spacecraft will be in a orbit, halo orbit as they call it, around this place. And what is the uniqueness of the Lagrange point is that is a place where the gravitational pull of the sun and the earth is equal, and hence less energy is required to have a spacecraft. Secondly, the way this spacecraft goes around the Lagrange point, it will has the sun and the earth continuously in sight. There will be no other body, no occultation or nothing to stop this. Now, this mission itself has been launched today very successfully. It will be around the earth for the next 10-15 days. And thereafter, it will take another 110 days to reach this point, which is about 1.5 million kilometers from Earth. Though actually the distance from the Earth to the Sun, this is only 1%. But definitely it is a point which is closer in space where the Sun can be seen and scientific experiments for various aspects can be done.
General Bhatt, tell us, why is it important to study the sun?
The sun, which is the biggest star of our solar system, provides energy, solar energy to the Earth. It also affects our weather. And not only that, it also, the radiations from the sun at time can affect our satellites, affect our communication equipment. So knowing about the sun and studying it, first to know the weather, and secondly, even to protect our assets in space. This is very important. And of course, for many more scientific discoveries, which will result in help in other missions to other planets and to the whole universe.
So, we have launched Chandrayaan 3 recently, and the Vikram lander is on the moon. The Pragyan rover is roaming around the lunar surface, and now a mission to the sun. What does this say about the India's space sector?
Firstly, we have to be very, very proud of the legacy which ISRO has given us. In the last 60 years, from where they started to where we have reached today, we are amongst the very few spacefaring nations of the world, and amongst them also, like polar landing on the moon, we are the first ones to do it. But yes, we are among the only few 4 who have been able to land on the moon. Similarly, missions to Aditya also mission to the sun have been done by very few. What it brings for us is a credibility as a scientific spacefaring nation in the world. And it does not only help in improving our international status as a country with scientific knowledge, but also helps commercially and for the economy, because we have a brand name which is called ISRO and which is well recognized internationally.
So the G20 meeting is happening in New Delhi next week, and there was also a space economy leaders meeting as part of the deliberations. So other countries also keen on collaborations with India in this sector?
Oh, definitely. One positive part of the space sector is a sector where traditionally collaboration has always been there. And in fact, India's space journey, we have had partners, USA, France, Japan, USSR and Russia, even Australia and UK. And of course, the European space agencies. This has been with partnership with them. And now, in the very recent time, there's been an accord signed with USA, which is called the Artemis Accord, and which has 28 member countries who agree to their viewpoint on exploration of how space has to be looked after. Not only USA, where the Prime Minister, when he had gone, there was this accord signed, even with France. Amongst the many areas of cooperation, space has been identified as well. And very soon in October, there are 23 to 24 major industries from France coming to India to see the opportunities for carrying out activities in the space domain.
So, what are the future missions that we should look forward to? There is already talk of a launch of a mission to Venus and the human space flight.
So, amongst all, as I would say, the most important is the human space flight Gaganyaan. Because the only thing which we have not done so far, which the leading nations of the world has done, is send a man to space. And of course, the steps of that are going. Some trials and activities will take place next year in 2024. And by 2025, we will have our astronauts in space. And beyond that, of course, somewhere in the future, maybe landing on the moon and beyond. Other than this, there would be, as I know, missions to Venus and maybe missions to Mars again, or some of the planets which ISRO identifies.
So, private sector playing an important part in the space sector. Earlier they were as vendors, and now we have seen lot many startups coming up. How are these successes of Chandrayaan 3 and Aditya L1 important for the private sector?
You know, when missions by a nation like Aditya and Chanak and Chandrayaan 3 are done, they establish the credibility not only of ISRO but of the nation and the scientific capabilities which exist within the nation. Like you said, and very truly, in both Chandrayaan mission and the Aditya mission, there are 10 to 11 private players who have been involved, some in the launch vehicle, others in providing components and sensors. Now, this is one part of, like you said, the old suppliers or vendors of ISRO. Now they are evolving. And the first evolution has taken place that PSLV in the future will be made by a consortium of HAL and L&T. Secondly, the SSLV, which was successfully tested by ISRO. Now, the technology for that is being transferred to private players. As on today, as I know, there are 20 companies in India which have shown interest in this SSLV project, and they do not only include big players but include startups. Overall, also in the space economy, like you asked, space economy is two-way. If our startups have to succeed tomorrow, they have not only to make products for the country, but for international markets. And for international markets, these two missions provide, as I say, the trickle-down effect, the brand name, which will give them credibility in the market.
So, could you tell us more about the space sector in India? How big is it when compared with the global market, and what are the growth prospects?
So this is one aspect, Sagar, which was identified by the government as a weakness. Like in 2020, out of the 360 billion global market, we only had a share of 2.3%, a little more than 9 billion. So for being one of the leading spacefaring nations, our share of the space budget was very less. And this is what we aspire that our private industry in the next 8 to 10 years will reach at least to 8 to 10%. And much in the future, we need to have a much larger share of it as this space economy is also growing. But more importantly, because the government after 2020 decided to open the space sector, they have taken out a space policy this year in April. The FDI policy is just round the corner, which will make more liberal funds coming to India by the foreign direct investment route. I think in the next 5 to 6 months, take out a space activity bill, and all the things are being done to create and promote an environment for private space in India. And our industries is also coming up to the mark. In the last 1 year, our startups have achieved a suborbital launch, which you would be knowing by Skyroot. And also, there are 3 startups who have been able to launch their satellites. And one of them is planning to launch an international constellation of 36 satellites. And they have got their preliminary order from the US Defense Department.
So, what are the key concerns of the space startup sector which you represent?
So, the most important thing, as you know, space has high risks and investments bring returns after a long time. Returns on investments are not immediate but take a long time. And hence, because of the risk involved and the large money which is required, it is financial support which becomes important. And for that, there's a requirement of soft loans, there's a requirement of PLI incentives, there is a requirement of import duty reduction, there is a requirement of export reduction, and maybe tax holidays. And also, most importantly, the FDI policy, which I'm very sure a liberal one is coming. So, most important part is finances. Capabilities are there in India. ISRO is supporting our startups along with also in space, which is a new organization made by the government primarily to promote and regulate space. So the legal system is in place. The support from ISRO is in place. What would be required is finances. And of course, as we are changing demand, because one of the customers, anchor customers is government, be it in weather, be it in education, be it in other many domains. Because apart from customers being in the open domain, anchor customers would also be required by the Indian government to give a kind of support to this industry while it is in its nascent stage. Also important aspect is the how spectrum is allocated for space, because we are of the view that it should be allocated by administrative method, because internationally that is the way it is done, and allocation by auction, which is done for terrestrial, would not be the most suitable method for space.
Sir, tell us about the startups that have grown up in the country over the past 3 years ago. We just had a handful of startups, and now we have about 150 odd startups. So tell us about the
So
sector.
the oldest startup in space is of 2012, but from 2012 to 17, it was one odd startup coming up every year. From 2018 is the time when the startups number increased, and today it has reached to 148 startups which are there. And most important for a startup is to be able to have their product or whatever they are doing in space. Two startups which are there being incubated in the Indian Institute of Science. There are other companies who are working on the application part. And in application, companies are working in insurance, providing information for farmers insurance and banking. There are companies which are monitoring assets. There are companies which are looking at disaster management monitoring. And there are many other more use cases which are coming.
So, as Aditya makes its way to observe the sun, do we also see private participants taking up science projects?
Science projects will primarily be, as I see, will be led by ISRO. Yes, in these subsets and subparts of the main scientific venture, like say Aditya, some will be there. Like if you see in Aditya, there are a number of IITs and number of private players involved.
Right.
But in the future, as these companies become commercially viable, they will definitely they have to be relevant, will have to use money in R&D and in scientific projects.
Right, sir. Thank you for talking to us.
Pleasure talking to you, Sagar.
You were listening to a discussion on Aditya L1, India's first solar observatory mission. The participants were Lieutenant General Anil Kumar Bhatt, science expert, and Sagar Kulkarni, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of Akashvani. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may share your feedback about this program through email at airnsdtalks@gmail.com or WhatsApp on 9289094044.